Hi, everyone. It is Judge Jeanine again, and I am here with Paul Stone, who is the CEO of Colonial Metals Group, Incorporated, and we are going to talk about your money. But in order to talk about your money, I think it's important for you to understand what motivates the man behind Colonial Metals Group and why he's involved in this and why I think it's good for you. So I want to continue to keep you up to date with Paul Stone and be able to discuss with you and with Paul what's going on in the world right now and how it impacts you and your financial situation. So if you're not interested in Colonial Metals, that's okay too. Listen in. I think it'll be informative. Hi, Paul.
Hey,
how
great to see you. I'm great. Thank you, Judge.
All right. With Donald Trump now in the White House, a lot is changing, all right? And one of the first things that we're talking about is Doge and what he's doing with Elon Musk. And, of course, the Dems are going crazy. You know, they think it's unconstitutional, and the truth is that the president, as a CEO, has the right to bring in whomever he wants to review things. In fact, he has a constitutional obligation to make sure the congressional appropriations are properly issued. Right. So we are now in this kind of catch-22 where the Democrats are saying, don't look under the hood. And everyone else is saying, you know, we all have this feeling that there's corruption abound in the federal government. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts just as the government itself as an ecosystem has no dry runs as it tries to conduct the business it's trying. So it can't rehearse, it can't memorize lines. These people come together and they haven't really worked together before. They haven't done this job before. They certainly haven't managed a $20 trillion economy before. They haven't managed 350 million people before. Even a CEO that might manage a business that has 10 or 100,000 employees, at least that man or woman understands their little ecosystem, the supply chain, the customers, all the stuff that goes along with making a company profitable. And that's the last piece. The government doesn't have to turn a profit. It doesn't ever have a board that slams their head against a wall for messing up a project or cost overruns or delays. Like imagine if the government was a construction business. And that's where Trump is so perfect to run the government. He's from a business that is so cutthroat, so sometimes the building, you might have a storm that causes damage to the building while it's under construction. You got to deal with that. You got to plan ahead. You got to think so far down the road, and you start with houses. You know, I might renovate an apartment, and then it's a house, and then it's a small building, and then it's bigger buildings. The government never has a chance to actually practice at what it does. So they're never really going to be any good at what they do, and so you certainly shouldn't ever give them a lot of power.
Yeah, and you know what? They're not only not good at what they do, Paul, but there are no consequences for when they do poorly.
Because they don't have to turn a profit. So there's nothing to really compare them against. You know, football teams, basketball teams, women's volleyball teams, women's basketball and soccer teams have to win.
Yeah.
That's their profit, is winning. So there's no pressure like that on a government. That's why the framers thought it should be a small thing, kind of a conduit between states, between foreign affairs, but never more powerful than a state.
Yeah. And so now we've got $50 billion so far that Doge has identified as waste, fraud, and duplicity. We don't know. And yet all of this money is not necessarily going to governments, it's going to NGOs.
Right.
So these non-government organizations are getting money, and the question is why, and is someone getting a kickback for that money? So why is the bureaucracy is identifying money that goes to an NGO? It's not even a congressional authorization. That makes no sense to me, that these bureaucracies and middle managers can say this much money goes to this Green New Deal and we're going to send it out to these 10 different organizations, and no one knows ultimately what the money's used for. Like, why shouldn't Ecuador pay for their own drag queen operas?
Yeah. We've all seen probably enough spy movies to understand these little programs get innocuous names like the ones you're mentioning now, but the money didn't even go to that. It went to something else.
Right.
But what we really need to do to benefit from this review and this inspection and this analysis that Doge is doing is understand those are symptoms of something much deeper. We don't want to run around treating symptoms or try to, curtail the actions of these government people and get them to act differently. That's not where we want to spend our time. We want to gut the government. You got the government, and then you got the people and their capabilities to do silly stuff like this. Like, you can't rub oil of Olay on your skin to fight cancer.
Right.
You know, we got to go to where the symptoms, we got to trace the symptoms back to the source. The source is the government has the ability to create money. So they're trying to act like the businesses that are in their offices Monday through Friday lobbying for what they want. They're trying to become a financial center. That's not what a government can never be, a financial center. You know, Obama coined the term, we're making investments. You know, it used to be we're going to raise taxes or spend money on stuff. Now he coined that term, we're going to invest in energy. We're going to invest in green. We're going to invest in people. We're going to invest in this. It's hooey because they have no experience investing in a damn thing that actually turned out well.
So you're in favor more of the private sector doing this stuff and
yeah,
not the taxpayer.
Offload all of it. Department of Education should have been privatized and money just sent or power sent really to corporate entities that would cooperate with states and counties and towns to deliver on the. Right?
How about you leave it to the states?
Right, but still, even when you have to turn, remember, the ethic is if you have to turn a profit, you're going to create one, you're going to do a great job, you're held accountable by the pressure of the sport itself. And when you don't, even state governments don't have to turn a profit. They have to live more nimble than the Fed because the state can't print money.
You are so right about that,
But if the Fed can print money, then you are going to have a government that ruins your life and ruins your world and ruins your country and ruins your finances because what's nuts about the Democrats and all their screaming is that what they can't wake up to is, well, it was printed money anyway, and we shouldn't be doing that because the whole currency can die. The dollar's only worth 3 cents. And then what do we have? We don't have any money to give anyone, and we can't do anything, and now we don't even have a government job.
Okay. The amazing part of what's going on with Doge is that they've identified $50 billion so far as waste, fraud, and abuse. And now people are getting into the issue of, should that be money that, first of all, it's no money. They're just saving it. It's not like they're recouping it. And they're saying, well, should we get a rebate? Maybe if it gets $2 trillion back, should we get a rebate? I mean, how does this benefit the taxpayer?
Well, you're still talking about printed money. So when the government has to live off of tax revenue, then those conversations about raising taxes, read my lips, no new taxes. Here's welcome to Bill Clinton. Yeah. Right? George H.W., read my lips, no new taxes, got a recession going in an election year, welcome Bill Clinton to the White House.
Right.
Because he raised taxes.
Right.
And everyone, in my opinion, and we all can just guess at stuff, but in my opinion, the entire world that would throw money at a politician and politicians themselves learned, don't raise taxes. Did you ever hear about raising taxes ever since then? Yeah. No. They just printed the money. They said, oh, my God, if the government has a shortfall, don't raise taxes, just print money.
And that's where you come in. And I didn't intend to go there, but that's where you come in when you talk about colonial metals. Okay, so if the dollar's worth 3 cents, metals are going through the roof right now.
Right. So if gold starts its journey when Nixon cuts ties with it.
In 1971.
Right. If it's
Remember that, folks. Paul Stone told you 1971.
Yeah. If it's $50 an ounce back then and today it's tapping on 3,000, don't be happy about that. Be horrified because it's not a stock that's improving its earnings and improving the country, its market share in the world. It's not adding new lines to its business. It didn't get a drug approved. Gold and silver is not a product. It's a location. It's a bunker. So if more and more people around the world are saying, and businesses and governments and wealthy folks and central banks are saying, just give us all the gold you can find, they're hoarding a safety element to their finances. Gold and silver is a bunker, if you will. Why would you need a bunker? Well, there's a threat. Oh, where's the threat coming from? So if the threats are so serious that gold has gone from 50 to 3,000 an ounce, that's a measurement of how horrific your fundamentals have eroded in your financial world. That you are starting to build homes on sand or sheets of ice instead of on stone.
So, Paul Stone, no pun there, how do tariffs play into this, in terms of the international scene? We all know that President Trump is using tariffs as leverage, and I have no problem with that. I love it. If you don't want to take your criminals back, was it Pirro in Colombia?
Right.
Good. We'll just raise your tariffs or whatever it is, whatever the game is. How does that impact gold?
Well, the last time, we haven't heard of it, Bill Clinton gave China favored nation trade status, and our elected officials, they're so brilliant. They made it a permanent law a year later. This is the early 90s. And so what that meant was there were no tariffs charged on China stuff coming in.
Right.
And so now we don't hear about tariffs forever until Trump like pulls this out of a, dusts it off the shelf. It hadn't been used in decades when he had his first term. And gold went up about 70% during his first term. Mm-hmm. The main thing you want to recognize about these actions is what are theirs going to be? Because in my mind, in March of 2018, Trump slaps tariffs on China. And in December of 2019, China slaps COVID on America.
Isn't that interesting? I never heard that.
The retaliation piece is where individuals have to
Say that again. Say that again.
So he's playing his sport, right? He's putting these things in place. One, you want to help bring jobs back to America. Right. You tell American corporations, hey, this crap you're having made in China is going to cost 25% more to bring it over here. Why don't you just set up some factory operations here and have Americans work here? Because now you've created the wiggle room to afford an American worker. Right? Because it's going to cost more anyway. So now you say, well, if the thing that we brought over here costs us $10 to make, now it's going to cost us, $12.50 to make and sell here. Does that give us the room to have an American worker in the mix, and we'll just make the stuff here again?
Yeah.
That's what it tries to kind of do. I mean, I don't know what other benefit would be other than a negotiating chip. Mm-hmm. But what you have to really look at is every action has a reaction, right? So when Trump slaps punishment and embarrassment on an honor system, right? These are the folks that will supplicate. And rather, if they dishonor their king, their boss, their family, they will just take a 12-inch blade and gut themselves.
Yep.
So you're dealing with, China's an honor country. With that honor thing, they can't deal with mistakes. It's like Chernobyl when you saw the movie on Netflix where there's lead on the ground and the communist guy's like, that's not lead. And the engineer's like, that's lead. The only place you find lead in a nuclear reactor is in the core. So if you're looking at it on the ground, your core exploded.
Yeah.
It's like the worst thing that could possibly happen. So they're going to deny. You can't embarrass China. Yes, they embarrassed the living hell out of them. Made them look small, weak. They were exposed as the beta, not the alpha. Yeah. So what'd they do? And guess where COVID first showed up? Everywhere Chinese like to visit. Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, right? Italy.
And they crippled us.
They did that intentionally. Yes, they did. And that's how they'll play. They don't give a damn. And their own people will suffer. They don't care.
They shut down the city.
Right. And they just locked people up, built cardboard buildings, locked them away. All they care about is world domination. Isn't that the only thing communism cares about?
Yeah.
Is war. That's what the Soviets cared about.
Yeah.
They were putting nukes in Cuba.
Yeah.
So when we look at the action taken by Trump, what are the reactions to us? Trump's not doing anything wrong. He's playing hardball. Hardball has to be played. And that's where Americans, I remember when McCain was running, he said this country's turned into a bunch of wimpy people. We got to look out for, have we become wimpy, and what can we withstand as Trump tries to make America great again? You got to break eggs to make an omelet, and you got to knock heads around sometimes, and that's going to cause us some inconvenience. Maybe things become more expensive. It's the retaliation side we got to look at.
Okay. All right. But now what it seems like is, where are we with China right now?
Well, we are in the most precarious. Just any bit. No one in this room no one watching would allow critical systems, critical elements to your existence with a heart beating in your chest to be made by a communist country.
Okay. All right.
So that's where we are. They make everything.
Yeah, they make our medicines, Paul.
Well,
they make our medicine.
Here's a couple, and we got to say, China didn't take this. They didn't come here and negotiate.
We gave it to them.
Our elected officials made it possible for our American corporations to kill American jobs and replace them with jobs in China. In 1990, out of 100 transactions that would go off in America, 82 of those transactions happened on stuff made here. Today, 11.
Amazing.
74,000 manufacturing firms have closed in this country since 1990. That's 23 manufacturing firms in every county in America to try and internalize just how massive that is. You don't have 23 7-Elevens in a county.
So how do we change that?
Great question.
How does it?
Okay,
how does it happen?
Knowing that I haven't figured all this out, and no one has, because no one's ever been here before.
You're pretty smart if you can figure this out.
But if you go to principles are what guide a life full of mystery. Truths guide you through the unknown because you are holding on to something that will not shift shape. a truth, a principle. Sun comes up tomorrow. You know, things that will just absolutely always be there. Truths, principles. So you say, is the strongest element to a country the fact that it makes stuff? This is why Dominican Republic doesn't have an economy. It sells lobsters that aren't from Maine and avocados. Like, they don't have anything to offer and to create revenue. And so they have a crappy place to visit, so they don't even have great tourism because it's not a safe place to go visit.
Right.
So when you look at the strength of a country, it'll be off what it offers, what it creates, what it produces. We used to make stuff. That's what made America great in the first place. To bring that back, you have to look at playing. You have to look at some tough choices, and there's no way to have half of it back and half of it gone. There's no in between.
Is Trump on the right track?
I would give American corporations 1 year to no longer ever have anything made. And after a year, you don't get to bring anything into America from outside this country.
So that is American
Yes.
corporations.
Yes.
So if you make your stuff in China, forget about the tariff. You're not bringing it in.
You got a year to move your factories back, and I don't give a damn. And yes, that's going to create economic hell for us, but it'll also create economic hell for China because they don't get our money anymore. And it might make them desperate. They make some moves to try and sequester our economy in a big way and make us slave to their empire. But they won't win because principles of truth always win. Falsehood, Hitler, Stalin, Lenin, communism, socialism can't win because it's not human. It isn't aligned with what the iron that flows through our blood to want to be free, produce, own what we created, work hard, sacrifice. All that stuff is what humans all about.
So we're relying on one man who understands the game. Donald Trump understands business. He gets the power. He gets the leverage. He's got 4 years.
Maybe.
So, I mean, how much can be done in 4 years? So I mean, doesn't it throw us back, Paul Stone, to the issue of you can't invest in the American dollar? I mean, that in the end, that it is it's gold and silver that are always going to be the constant benefit.
Because they're real. The dollar was real when it was backed by gold. So just think of paper as a better way to carry gold and silver. And it took a while to invent that. Our paper money is a top secret recipe, and it's 65% linen. Yeah. It is impossible to recreate that feel, but it's also kind of indestructible. Right. So when you look at in my opinion, when you look at the invention of that kind of paper, you don't have to carry gold and silver anymore because I carry a billfold instead of a satchel on my hip that jingles when I run for the bus. And, I don't like that. I don't want to jingle when I move. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And your purse doesn't have to weigh as much. Right. So these were truths. The chicken dinner you ate came from a chicken, didn't come from a 3D printer and protein goop. Yeah. When we look at Beyond Meat, it soared, it was incredible, and then everyone's like, yeah, but I still like sausage. Yeah. But the fake and falsehood never has a chance to stay in place. Gold and silver stays in place and will always be something you can depend on and always be credible and viable because it is real.
Okay, so how do the interest rates play into that? And what power does President Trump have over the interest rates and lowering them?
He doesn't have any. He can put a pressure, and he pressured Powell the first time around. Cut rates. He also is pressuring Powell to weaken the dollar. So the DXY is the symbol for the dollar index that compares it just gives let's think of it as maybe a thermometer. So when the dollar's up around 100, that's pretty hot. That means it's harder for our stuff to be sold in other countries and easier for their stuff to get sold here. So if the dollar's in the 80s, and I'm not a financial advisor and a trained economist, but if the dollar's in the 80s, then it's easier for our companies to export and get our stuff sold in other countries, and it's harder for their stuff to get sold here.
Exactly.
So he was beating up on Powell about our dollar's too strong, find ways to weaken the dollar as a currency. Our money continues to weaken. On average, 2 pennies of buying power a year is lost since the year 2000. Now that number eventually hits somewhere near zero. Right. And then you got massive issues. Right. So if we're going to have, and when my thought comes about closing the borders to having anything imported here, unless it's French wine. Yeah. Because the world needs Italian and French wine, and there's some certain things we need, and you would have a list of things we just can't make here. We'll bring that in. Yeah. We need We need
avocados,
Chinese fireworks.
or whatever.
We need Chinese fireworks.
Yes.
We can't have military uniforms made in China. This is the stuff. Like, we can't have American flags made in China. We can't have stuff made there. I don't care what it costs. Go without then. Life isn't about getting everything you want and cheating and finding a way to do it. But that's what a printed dollar tries to provide everybody. And that's going to end badly. Because when the resource of the dollar is exhausted, meaning if you saw the headlines tomorrow, Judge, oh my God, the seismologists, all the oil engineers, they all got it wrong. They were counting water instead of oil. 3% of the world's oil supplies remains in the ground.
3?
Imagine that was the headline tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
How much longer does our economy work?
We don't work. It's not going to work.
Oil would be $1,000 a barrel, right? 10,000.
Yeah, we'll go back to the Middle Ages.
Exactly. So now imagine the resource that comes before energy is the dollar, because it pays the oil drillers, it pays the pipe makers, it pays for the oil to come out of the ground.
Right.
3% of the dollar's reserves remains in the dollar.
Okay.
You're almost done.
We are almost done.
So I would encourage Trump to take his 4-year shot. He can't get reelected. He doesn't have to worry about being liked. He just has to worry about being right.
Getting it done.
Get it done. Or, in my favorite movie, Braveheart, where if he's William Wallace, and I told him this when I met him at Mar-a-Lago, I said, because Stallone introduced him as the second coming of George Washington, and I said, George Washington was fighting a visiting army and navy. That's tougher. That's a tougher deal. Mm-hmm. You're fighting an enemy that's already here and entrenched, and you're seeing it all over the TV screens. You can't take our money. You can't take our money. You can't take this. You can't do that. You can't fire these people. We need someone to become the Bruce, who eventually doesn't do Trump right in the movie, but later on he recognizes William Wallace was right. Freedom is the only thing worth having. You can go home and live a long life, but what would you give for one chance to stand here today and tell the British, you may take our lives, but you can't take our freedom? Mm-hmm. That is America. If you aren't free, if you don't make your stuff, you aren't free. We're slave to China. We can't step to them and punch them in the face because they'll go, great, we aren't going to send you rare earth minerals. Now you can't make fighter jets. We're not going to send you your pharma. Now you're not all these cancer and mental health issues and blood pressure issues and all these diseases. Good luck with that. I don't know how long it would take to set up a lab to make those pharmas here. But we need a Bruce to come say one day after Trump's term, you bled with Wallace, now bleed with me.
But in the end, unless he cultivates, unless he plants a seed, for America to kind of regroup in terms of pharma and industry, then we're going to be another
Venezuela.
Not just another Venezuela, I agree with you, but another empire that went down.
Yeah, like they all have. And that's the history lesson to look at. Rome. What killed Rome? Yep. The government.
And greed.
And they eventually didn't have enough money to pay their bills. A gold Roman coin at the end of Roman times was 5% gold. The rest was beryllium.
Is that right?
Yep. They printed coinage.
Interesting.
And so after that comes Portugal, then Spain, then the Dutch, then the French, then the British, now the Americans. So the same stories being told by governments that end up with their own ability to create money, trying to act like businesses. When they're not, they have no practice doing any of that. And there's no pressure holding them accountable to doing a great job, like turning a profit or winning a sports game.
And in the end, in this country, unless we get this all squared away in the next 4 years, it's not looking too good.
No, it doesn't look good because it looks the same. It looks the same as all the failures, empires that have failed before us. So Trump can change mindsets. He can definitely you can't solve a problem. You can't hit a target you're not aiming for. So you can't change a problem you're not aware of. He's making everyone aware of the fundamental ills and ailments to our country's financial future now. That's what's incredible about what he's doing.
What he's doing with Elon Musk. Is that going to matter? People say unless he gets into the entitlements, it's not going to matter.
So it kind of doesn't matter because you can't euthanize 70 million retirees. They're the source of the bills. Yeah. So when you say, well, it was Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. Okay, look behind the name. What is the source of need for those funds? Retirees.
Yeah.
And when you invented Social Security long ago, you had 44 workers for every retiree. Today you have 3.
Is that true?
Can you see if you had 44 people pulling you and me around? We spent a great life together, and now we're retired, and they're pulling our sleigh.
Yep.
We have 44 people pulling our sleigh. No problem. Now there's 3. We ain't going anywhere. So you print money. So you print money to artificially create. It's like we had an artificial financial intelligence from Nixon. You have an artificial 44 people out there pulling our sleigh, but they're printing money. These are avatars. And eventually the resource of the dollar is exhausted, and you can't have all of these falsehoods in our economy anymore. You wouldn't have $1 trillion for the military anymore. You wouldn't have any money for any of this anymore. 3% of the oil remains in the ground, your economy stops soon. 3% in the dollar, you get down to a penny, half a penny, a tenth of a penny. You aren't moving anymore. It's the energy that comes before all other energies are expended.
So in the end, it's up to Donald Trump to bring businesses back to the United States, to punish those American businesses that don't come back, to cut back on all the duplicity, and to run things like a business, which he will do. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we could suspend term limits and just let them go for 8, 12 years.
I agree with you.
Because if you don't, there's a saying, if it isn't in you, you can't offer it to anyone.
Right.
And it's truly in him. It's truly in me.
Yeah.
But it's truly in him.
Yes.
And you just can't replace that with someone who memorizes, like when a coach leaves a team, the team, you go, but he left the playbook. Why can't the team just copy the playbook?
Yeah, right.
Because you don't have the person that taught the playbook to the players.
It's the passion.
Right.
They get too comfortable.
Yeah.
And it is
delivery.
It's a sad commentary when you see people like Elizabeth Warren, who started with nothing and is now worth how many, tens of millions of dollars. I mean, and you make $150,000, $200,000 a year, maybe. How does that happen?
How did Cheney? She's worth $13 million now.
Yeah.
But she spent her whole time in public service.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, but it's not only that. It's
again,
the
symptoms, though. Symptoms.
Yep.
Symptoms. The government shouldn't be on TV all day. It should be a thing we don't really hear about much.
Interesting.
And so if we're seeing it on TV all the time, we're seeing all the issues they create, we're seeing all the errors and goofy mistakes they made and evil mistakes they make when they knowingly just continue to double down on stuff that isn't working. That's what I call evil. I call that evil.
It is evil. And
it injures American people, and it injures people around the world. When we print, we create inflation globally.
Yeah. And when we just have this continuing non-term limits, nobody has the incentive to do anything but collect money for themselves. And the only way you're going to get that to change is to get Congress and the president to agree to change the law. We can't change that law. Congress has to change the law as it relates to term limits.
Right. And you can't change Congress. So again, what can we change? The world is moving away from the dollar. The dollar is moving away from our world. Right? We've made our government has made us dependent on a communist country that makes all of our stuff. You walk into any store, it's made in China.
Everything.
Even you walk into a big box store, the steel girders for the shelves.
You buy designer clothes, they're made in China.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep. And so that is not real. Like, that's not real, like, reality. Like, we're both sitting here on chairs and there's gravity and we're spinning around the sun and the moon spins around us. Like, that's all real stuff. Printed money is creating a financial video game. So as the world leaves the dollar, as the dollar eventually leaves us, we get left behind and broke. Reason I talk about precious metals, the reason it goes perfectly with, I'm already pissed off about how everything's gone, but then gold and silver is a solution to how it's going to go if you have it before it busts. So I get to not only be upset about how it goes, but really offer a solution to people, because if you think of gold and silver as a location for money, instead of an investment, then it clears up for you to go, oh, everything that's run up and inflated by the dollar printing,
it's not impacting me,
can die back to reality. If I'm in gold and silver, I've frozen those wildly inflated values I think I'm worth on paper, or while the dollar can be printed, I've frozen all that incredible wealth in something that doesn't shrink when the dollar goes away.
Right.
It actually goes even
protected.
higher. Right. So I get to offer a solution to this problem for the individual. The individual can't solve Congress. It can't solve the government. Yeah. The government just goes bankrupt one day.
It's like we're little ants, and we don't have the power to make a difference and to make the change, but we can impact our own lives. And that's why I wanted to talk to you today about that, because it's so above all of us in terms of what's going on. We don't have a lot of control, Paul Stone.
No, and we have to, that's right. And Judge, we have to then look at how do things retaliate against what Trump's trying to do. If he wants to make America obviously the #1 spot on the planet, who's not going to like that?
Yeah.
Who's going to want to vie to stop that
The
from happening?
competitors.
Right.
And the left, because it's from within as well.
The enemy is within.
And Abraham Lincoln said that in 1838
Wow.
in his speech to the Lyceum. The enemy will not come from across the sea or across the Blue Ridge Mountains. The enemy, if there is to be one, is within us.
Yep.
And if we die by suicide.
Yeah.
And those are my final words. And we want to thank Paul Stone for being with us today and talking about Colonial Metals Group. And we hope to see you next time. Take care. Paul, thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
I always
Such
learn
a
a lot
pleasure.
when I talk to you.